Ready? Mother Clare, people talk a lot about spiritual initiations. Can you describe what that is and why someone would want to have that experience? Also, what would they gain from it and how do they go about attaining it?
Spiritual initiations are mentioned a lot in various religious traditions, at least in the more mystical or esoteric versions of the different religions. An initiation is not just an experience, as a lot of people try to tell it. They often want to just make it something kind of trivial, or they say the first time they had a sense of something, it was an initiation, so the word is used that way. It's actually, in mysticism, in the serious, deep mystical paths, it's a very specific thing that one does not attain by oneself. One is brought into an initiation by a spiritual teacher who's been trained and empowered to do so. So there, in the Christian mystical tradition, we speak of three major initiations. The first one we call mystical baptism, the second we call illumination, and the third God realization or self-realization. In mystical baptism, a person who has prepared themselves and has done some work in forgiving and being forgiven and cleansed their heart that way, they then, through the administration of this initiation by a priest, can actually have the light that is within them ignited to such a point that it begins to grow within their beings. It is a powerful experience that people remember their whole lives and that blesses them their entire lives. If they then continue working with a spiritual teacher who can help them grow that light inside them to where it gets stronger and bigger, they can begin to fill their whole bodies with that light. And I'm not speaking symbolically. I don't mean something that sort of feels like light or the light of wisdom or such. I mean actual spiritual light, that they fill their bodies with it to where they can see it, or people with spiritual sight can see it within them. And when that comes to a level of brightness, they can be prepared for the second initiation, which is called the initiation of illumination. In illumination, that light within them then is, through the help of a spiritual teacher, is then sealed into their body so that that light actually goes into their cells and stays at that level of brightness then for the rest of their lives, unless they actually go about diminishing it in some way. Once a person is filled with that light, they are then able to, again, continuing with the work of a teacher, strive to where they can come to the source of that light within their beings. And when a teacher takes them to that place, and they can have the veil removed that covers over the light of the self within, they can come into a direct face-to-face relationship with God within their beings. And that is called God realization or self-realization. At that point, they can actually see God, they can hear God, they can come into the beginnings of the work towards complete union with God within. So those are the three major mystical Christian initiations. And those initiations are similar, very close to the same in all of the great mystical paths, because how could there be anything different than the journey from wherever you start to union with God? That is the spiritual path.